How has been your stay in Bangalore?
Oh, it's extremely ecstatic.
Wow.
Yes, it's very busy.
You've been having a lot of satsangs, Guru Maharaj?
I've been having a lot of fun.
That is a very good change. We are awaiting your invitation so that we can join the fun.
Okay, just 1 second.
Yeah, please. So this morning we had a Japa Yagya in the morning for His Holiness Jayapataka Swami. Guru
How
Maharaj.
is it now? Because I haven't heard lately.
Mhm.
The
No, we had
critical
this.
day fast, right?
Sorry, come on.
Critical 7 days fast.
That's right. The critical 7 days have passed, and that's a very good news. So this morning from 7 to 8, devotees got together, and then we did japa together. And indeed, prayers are powerful, undoubtedly. So the critical, yes.
So he still doesn't have any symptoms.
At the moment, he is not really showing any symptoms. He continues to go ahead with his daily Chaitanya Charitamrit Katha. So, as per the doctors who did the transplant on him, they say that 7 days, if he passes, then the worst is over.
Yeah,
That's what they say.
a very good news.
Yes, indeed.
Very good news. Okay,
So,
so start now.
yes, we will start. So, a quick one. We are on the 12th session of the structural overview of Srimad Bhagavatam. And on behalf of the School of Vedic Studies, we are again, as always, very, very grateful to His Holiness Bhakti Vigyan Goswami Maharaj for taking us through this wonderful journey into Srimad Bhagavatam. We have reached up to the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And thanks to everyone who's been participating in these sessions. One thing our request is that we need to have some reading before and after. I think that will help us further to dive deep into what you illuminate each time that we have the session with you, Guru Maharaj. So we will really look forward to before and after readings also. So without much ado, yeah, sorry, please.
Okay,
No. Kindly. You wanted to say something.
we'll start. No, I'll start.
Okay, all right. Hare
Om
Krishna,
Namo
thank you.
Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo
Om Namo
Bhagavate
Bhagavate
Vasudevaya.
Naranam Namaskrityanam Cheva Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Nasta Prayasya Bhagavati Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki Yam Pravrajantam Anapedam Apetatritam Vaipayano Virahaka Tarajuha Utreti Dhanmayatayo Tarabodhi Tam Sarva Bhuta Hidayam. So, once again, I'm happy to be with you. Initially, when we started this series of lectures, I thought it would be just 3-4 lectures. Now we're already on the 12th session, as it was announced by Rasakrida Rayana Prabhu. And we are trying to understand the message of Srimad Bhagavatam and the structure of Srimad Bhagavatam, how Srimad Bhagavatam is organized structurally to give us the complete understanding of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which is repeated again and again, not easy. To understand Brahman is difficult, but not so difficult. To understand Paramatma is difficult, more difficult, but not extremely difficult. But to understand Krishna as a person, and especially in his highest manifestation as Braja Krishna, is actually very difficult. Even though it may seem to be easy for us. So Bhagavatam is purifying our heart to give us this experience, because ultimately to understand means to have the experience. Therefore, Vedas, they come from the Sanskrit root vid, and the meaning of the Sanskrit root vid, to know, is actually to see. To know God means to see God. Atmava are drashtavyam. One who didn't see the God in person, he doesn't know him yet. So, and therefore, the whole Bhagavatam is a darshan. It's darshan of the Lord, and ultimately it facilitates us to have darshan of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in person. And as we were progressing slowly through the different topics of Srimad Bhagavatam, 10 topics, Atra, Sarga, Visargascha, Sthanam, Poshanam, Udaya, and through the cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam, which roughly corresponds to these topics, even though all the topics are described in all the cantos, but still there is some emphasis to a certain topic in each particular canto. As we are progressing slowly, we are preparing our heart to the advent of Lord Krishna. The end of 9th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam is this, event, advent of Lord Krishna, who is Lord Krishna, and then ultimately the beginning of the 10th canto, the advent of Lord Krishna will say, the advent of Lord Krishna within our heart, within our consciousness, within our buddhi, intelligence. So we are on the 7th canto, and as you probably remember, I described general structure and the message of the 7th canto in the last class, but because it was little rushed, I couldn't describe the second part. And the second part is very important because second part of the 7th canto is describing Varnashrama according to Srimad Bhagavatam. And this is what Prabhupada called his 50% unfulfilled mission. And this is what puzzles many, many devotees, how to fulfill it. And there are very diverse opinions about this. Some people say that just forget about it, it's impossible in our present day and age. Others say, no, let's go for it, let's become very traditional, right on the spot, get into some remote village, cut off electricity, cut off internet, and start plowing the field with the bulls. So there are different recipes or different ideas of how to apply this, and therefore it's very important for us to understand what is described here. Therefore, I decided not to go to the 8th canto today, but to devote our whole session today to this remaining 5 chapters of the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And trying to elucidate some points. Obviously, I will not be able to do justice to this important topic within short time. But, nevertheless, try to explain important points which Narada Muni is doing. And in fact, this 5 chapters of Srimad Bhagavatam is Narada Smriti. We all know that there is Manu Smriti, Yagyavalkya Smriti, Parashara Smriti, Vishnu Smriti. There are 20 Dharma Shastras. Only few of them are still extant. 6 as far as I know. The law of Dharma, the law of Vishnu, the law of Parashara, the law of Yagyavalkya, and few others. So here we have the 21st Smriti, Narada Smriti, or the laws of Varnashrama described from the Bhakti point of view, because Narada is Bhakti avatar. He is the living manifestation of Bhakti, of devotional service, and he is redefining Varnashrama from the vantage point of Bhakti, from this angle of vision. And therefore, it's very important for us. What is the place of Varnashrama? What is the system of Varnashrama? What are the main principles of Varnashrama? What is the purpose of Varnashrama for those who practice Bhakti? Because sometimes it is said that for those who are practicing Bhakti, Varnashrama is not necessary at all. And there are, you can make a strong case to this, especially taking the quotes from Bhakti Rasamrita Singh of Goswami. So that will be the topic of our discussion today. And I don't know for how long I will go, but please prepare your questions if you have. I will try to answer. Or if you have some questions from the last session, I will also be happy to try to answer these questions about the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So let's start. I will read a very important verse from the beginning of this section of Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th chapter of the 7th canto, the perfect society for social classes. Text number 7. Dharma Moolam hi Bhagavan Sarva Veda Mayo Harihi Smritam Chatat Vidan Rajan Yena Chatma Prasidati. Dharma Moolam, the root of religious principles. He indeed, Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sarva Veda Mayaha, the essence of all Vedic knowledge. Harihi, the Supreme Being, the Supreme Person, Smritam Cha, and the scriptures which belong to the category of Smriti. There is Vedas, Shruti, Sarva Veda Mayo. Hari is, consists of all these Vedas. He is the living manifestation of all Vedas, but not only the Shrutis, but also Smritis. Smritam Cha, Tadvidan Rajan, of those who know the Supreme Lord, Rajanu King, Yena, by this Dharma, religious principles, Cha, Atma, mind, body, and everything, Prasidati, become fully satisfied. So translation and purport by His Divine Grace is Bhaktivedanta Swami. The Supreme Being, the personality of Godhead, is the essence of all Vedic knowledge. Vedaischa sarvaira hameva vidyo, Vedanta krit veda viteva chaham. Krishna himself says, Vedaischa sarvaira hameva vidyo. I am to be known by all the Vedas. The root of all religious principles and the memory of great authorities. Srila Prabhupada gives a very special translation of this line. Smritam Chatat Vidana. He is the memory of all those who know Vedas. Very beautiful. O King Yudhishthira, this principle of religion is to be understood as evidence. The word mulam here can be translated as a root. That's an ordinary translation, but mulam also evidence can be translated as evidence. On the basis of this religious principle, everything is satisfied, including one's mind, soul, and even the body. So if you want to have satisfaction, you should know Dharma. And you should know what is the root of Dharma, where you can, from where you can get Dharma, how you can follow these religious principles. That's the only way to be satisfied in this material world. So let's read the purport by Srila Prabhupada. As stated by Yamaraja, Dharmantu Sakshat Bhagavat Pranitam. That was one of the most favorite quotes of Srila Prabhupada. Yamaraja, the representative of the Lord who takes care of the living entities, of the living beings after their death, gives this verdict as to how and when the living being will change his body. He is the authority, and he says that the religious principles consist of the codes and laws given by God. Ultimately, the religious principles emanate from God. That's a very important point, which Srila Prabhupada starts with. No one can manufacture religion, and therefore manufactured religious systems are rejected by the followers of the Vedic principles. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said, Vedaischa sarvairahameva vedyaha. Vedic knowledge means to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna. Therefore, whether one speaks of the Vedas, scriptures, religion, or the principles of everyone's occupation of duty, all of them must aim at understanding Krishna, the Supreme Personality of God. Srimad Bhagavatam therefore concludes, Savaipum sam paradharmo yato bhakti radoksaja haitu kya pratihata yeyatma suprasidati. In other words, religious principles aim at learning how to render transcendental loving service to the Lord. That service must be unmotivated and unchecked by material conditions. Then human society will be happy in all respects. The Smriti, the scriptures following the principles of Vedic knowledge, are considered the evidence of Vedic principles. There are 20 different types of scriptures for following religious principles, and among them, the scriptures of Manu and Yajnavalkya are considered to be all-pervading authorities. In the Yajnavalkya Smriti, it is said, Shruti Smriti Sadacharaha Swasya Cha Priyam Atmanaha Samyak Sankalpajah Kamo Dharma Moolam Idam Smritam. That's the version of Dharma Moolam according to Yajnavalkya Smriti. And there is a version of what is Dharma Moolam, or the root of Dharma, according to Manu Smriti, which we will quote. So we will have 3 different versions of Dharma Moolam. What is the root of Dharma? How to get Dharma rooted within our heart. And the 3 different versions are quite distinct. They're different according to different audiences. So we will understand this topic. We will start understanding this topic of Varnashram Dharma while comparing these 3 different versions of what is Dharma Moolam. Dharma Moolam hi Bhagavan Sarva Vedamayo Harihi, as in Bhagavatam. Samyak Sankalpa Jakamo Dharma Moolam Idam Smritam. Swasya cha priyamatmanaha, dharma mulam according to Yagyavalkya Smriti, and we will also read what is there in Manu Smriti about dharma mulam. Srila Prabhupada continues his purport. Shruti Smriti Puranadi Pancharatra Vidhim Vina Aikantiki Harer Bhaktir Utpatayaiva Kalpate. The purport is that to become a devotee, one must follow the principles laid down in Shruti Smriti. One must follow the codes of the Puranas and Pancharatrika Vidhi. One cannot be a pure devotee without following the Shruti and Smriti, and the Shruti and Smriti without devotional service cannot lead one to the perfection of life. So Prabhupada is beautifully puts everything in place. He said that yes, being a devotee, we should follow Shruti and Smriti, which means following Varnashrama Dharma, but the following Varnashrama Dharma without being a devotee is useless. It will not bring you to the ultimate goal of life. So both things have to be there, and definitely Bhakti is the first, but nevertheless, Varnashrama Dharma, following the duty, is also very important because Shruti Smriti Puranadi Pancharatra Vidim Vina Aikantiki Harer Bhaktir Utpatayaiva Kalpate. It only brings chaos in the society, even if it is Aikantiki, Ekanta Bhakti, even if you are following it very, in a very determined way. If you don't follow Shruti and Smriti, it will only create chaos. And that's very appropriate statement because we know sometimes devotees become very fanatical and they say only bhakti, only bhakti, only bhakti, nothing of this, and that creates disturbance in the society. That actually has created a very bad reputation to ISKCON when the devotees, especially in America in early days, they started violating or breaking all the regulative principles of pious life. They were lying, they were stealing, they were doing all kinds of strange things. And that created, great uproar among people in general and brought about disrepute to ISKCON, which were gradually coming out, or maybe have come out in some countries of the world. So it's right there in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu by Srila Rupa Goswami, Shruti Smriti Puranadi Pancharatra Vidim Vina. Therefore, Varnashrama is very important, but in just one sentence, Prabhupada puts it in a proper perspective. One cannot be a pure devotee without following Shruti and Smriti without devotional service cannot lead one to the perfection of life. And therefore, from all the evidence, the conclusion is that without bhakti devotional service, there is no question of religious principles. God is the central figure in the performance of religious principles. Almost everything going on in this world as religion is devoid of any idea of devotional service and therefore condemned by the verdict of Srimad Bhagavatam. Without devotional service, so-called religious principles are only cheating. Prabhupada is extremely strong in this purport at the end. Almost everything going on in this world as religion is devoid of any idea of devotional service and therefore condemned by the verdict of Srimad Bhagavatam. What Prabhupada means is that, yes, the desire to please the Lord as a person is the root of religious principles. This is what Narada Muni is saying here. Dharma Mulam Hi Bhagavan. Indeed, the root of Dharma is Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead, Hari, who is Sarva Veda Maya, whose will, whose desire, how to please him is described in all the Vedas. All the Vedas are describing how you should behave to please the Lord. And if we don't have this very clear understanding that by following all these rules and regulations, ultimately what is the purpose to be achieved, the purpose which we should achieve is the pleasure of the Lord, the satisfaction of the Lord, that Haritoshanam, that Hari is ultimately satisfied, and whatever we do is Shrama Eva Hi Kevalam, is indeed pure waste of time, pure useless labor. So therefore, this verse is basically the foundation for the whole second part of the seventh canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Dharma Mulam Hi Bhagavan Sarva Veda Mayo Harihi Smritam Chatad Vidandra Jan Yena Chatma Prasidati. And ultimately, if the Lord is pleased, you will be also pleased. You will be satisfied. Everyone will be satisfied. All the people around you will be satisfied. If you're really pleasing the Lord by your actions, by your behavior. If not, then you will get all kinds of dissatisfied people, starting with yourself, somebody whom you see in the mirror every day. So that's the reading. Before we start describing the general review of this part, so let me chant Mangala Charan. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prachari Panchakalpatarvescha Kripa Sindhubhe Vacha Patitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare Yantah Pradeshi Mama Vachimam Prasuttam Sanjeevaya Kila Shakti Darasvadam Anyam Shahasta Charanam Savanata Tanam Swasyastu Vishwasya Kalak Prasidatam Deyantu Bhutani Shivami Thodya Manascha Padram Jata Padam Aveshyatam Namati Atyahaki. Prahlad Maharaj in this prayer from the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, he prays, let our mind will go deep into the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and dwell there in the Supreme Personality of Godhead without any reason. Aveshyatam no matiratya haituki. Let him be concentrated on Bhagavan without any expectation in return. So that's what we're trying to do by reading Srimad Bhagavatam and discussing Srimad Bhagavatam. So let's start. Let's go a little back in time. The 7th canto, as we said several times, is describing Uti, the impetus, the nature which we have, the impetus to act. Why some people have such a strong urge to act in a simple way, and why other people are more inclined to act in a pious way. Why some people have Daiva Sampati, divine wealth, divine nature, and other people have Asura Sampati, the demoniac nature. And this whole topic is being described in connection with the broader philosophical point that is impartiality of the Lord, how the Lord is impartial. Because when we look around, we will apparently see that there are some people who have the nature which is more pleasing to the Lord. They're born with this nature. And there are some people like Hiranyakashipu who are born with the nature which is not pleasing to the Lord. And as a result of it, they're bound to create abominable actions. And what to do in this regard? You know, the Lord doesn't seem to be, it seems to be that he is favoring other people. They're born with certain nature. And even if we take the idea of the previous slide, that it's according to your previous actions, still nevertheless, you know, what is the, you know, if the Lord was really impartial, you know, he has to create equal opportunity system. Like in America, democracy means everyone has equal opportunities. Nobody is born with some privileges, even though in reality everyone has some privileges. But people are trying to say that, you know, we should have the system of equal rights. It means that nobody has privileges from the start, from the scratch. So how the Lord is impartial if we see that you know, people have different starting positions, how it is. And the answer, of course, which we give is that Bhakti is universal. Anyone can practice Bhakti. It doesn't matter whether you're rich or poor, whether you're intelligent or completely dumb, whether you are eloquent or you cannot even hardly speak, you know. I know at least one case or a few cases of people who were deaf and dumb. And nevertheless, they started, even though they were dumb because they couldn't speak, because of their contact with Bhakti, they started, they developed the ability to chant the holy name. So there is ample proof that Bhakti is available to everyone. That's okay, that's fine. If Bhakti is available and anyone can achieve the perfection in Bhakti, at least in human form of life, of course, for the lower species of life. Even Srila Prabhupada says in his famous speech about Hare Krishna mantra that even a child can do it, even a dog can do it. He says even a dog can come to the kirtan and join the kirtan. And sometimes we see these videos in the internet, the dog goes around Tulsi in Vrindavan, or dogs join Arati in Vrindavan and try to chant together with people who are glorifying the Lord. So the Lord gave this completely very democratic arrangement with Bhakti, and he says basically again and again and again everywhere that yes, Bhakti is available for everyone. You don't need to have any preliminary qualification. Therefore, the only qualification to execute Bhakti is faith. And anyone can develop faith. Faith is nothing, it's not a result of your intellectual capacity. It's not even a result of your previous good karma or bad karma. Sometimes people who are criminals, who are really desperate and who committed a lot of sins, they are much more receptive to Bhakti than those so-called pious people. Because they know that all these sinful activities did make them happy. You know, I have a person acquainted or whatever he is. You know, he is from completely, totally, extremely sinful background. You know, he started taking heavy drugs in early life. He was taking, you know, so much heavy drugs that 3 times he was clinically dead because of the overdose of this heavy drugs, and he couldn't just get rid of it. And then he just got in prison, and he committed some crimes, and in prison he got Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita. And somehow or other, by Prabhupada's mercy, he read part of this book. He developed a very strong faith in Krishna and in this process, which enabled him to give up all these heavy drugs just like this. You know, he said, I gave them up immediately on the spot of course, I don't know, in prison he didn't have this facility, but he said, I never return to this, even though it's physiologically, clinically, practically impossible because the heavy drugs destroy your mind, and the impression is so strong that people cannot function as a normal human being. Now he's a, he's a great devotee of Jagannath Prasadam. He is getting, tons of Jagannath Prasadam and distributing Jagannath Prasadam because he believes very firmly. So what I want to say is that, yes, Lord is impartial. There's no doubt about it. Why? Because of this fact, because he gave us bhakti, and there is no requirement for bhakti. But then there is another question which arises. Not everyone is inclined to bhakti. Some people are not inclined to bhakti. And the example of it is in the previous part of the 7th canto. Prahlad Maharaj is preaching to his demon's friend, and we don't know what really happened with all of them, whether all of them became devotees or not. But Prahlad Maharaj is also preaching to his father, and his father, he became only agitated by his preaching. He didn't become a pure devotee. He is in contact with pure devotee, with Mahabhagavata devotee. He is hearing him from his lotus lips, very important instructions. He doesn't become a devotee. Prahlad Maharaj's wife, not his wife, but his mother, Kayadu, she was listening Narada Muni. Prahlad Maharaj was listening Narada Muni, and Kayadu was listening Narada Muni. And Kayadu was probably sleeping all the time during Bhagavatam class by Narada Muni. And Prahlad Maharaj, being just 7 months old or whatever, in her womb, he very intently heard everything, not only heard, but also digested everything, realized everything, and became Mahabhagavata pure devotee. So again, we see that there is apparent impartiality. And as I said last time, it's a habit of the demons to accuse the Lord of being impartial, as Hiranyakashipu does in the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So the idea of a devotee is to protect the Lord and to explain how the Lord is impartial. We can see that in the 1st canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Queen Kunti, she actually proves in a very beautiful way how the Lord is impartial. In her prayers, she is standing in front of the Lord and she is saying, you are equal to everyone. You're not only equal to me, but you're equal to everyone, and everyone gets from you what he wants to get. And everyone indeed has equal opportunity to become a devotee and to render service to you. So here there is a return to this topic of Srimad Bhagavatam, and as a return to this topic of Srimad Bhagavatam, well, returning to this topic of Srimad Bhagavatam again, we have to try to prove that and understand how the Lord is impartial. And we will definitely understand how the Lord is impartial by giving the alternative system. So we already said that this 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam describes how to get pure devotion. And the direct way to get pure devotion is to come in contact with a pure devotee, open your heart, listen to him, Shradhadanasya, with faith, Vasudeva Katharuchi, from him about the topics of the Lord, Vasudeva Katharuchi. And then Syan Mahatseva Vipro, if you start serving Mahat, this great people, serving this great Mahan pure devotees, then you will get bhakti. This is how bhakti starts. You will get Shraddha, and because you will get Shraddha, you will get bhakti, because Shraddha is the qualification for pure devotional service. But because not everyone is ready to do this, there is an alternative indirect way of how to come to this point, how to prepare one's heart for devotional service. And that alternative way is Varnashrama Dharma. What is Varnashrama Dharma? Varnashrama Dharma is nothing but a preparational process, a very amazing and beautiful system created by the Lord himself, Chaturvarnyam Maya Srishtam. He himself created this, and he says about this in Bhagavad Gita, Chaturvarnyam Maya Srishtam. And the Lord says this only because he wants to be impartial, only because he is merciful to everyone and he wants to give chances to everyone. So basically the essence of Varnashrama, or the essence of the second part of the seventh canto, is to understand how by following the duties of Varnashrama, one prepares one's heart for bhakti, and how one becomes receptive to bhakti. What does it mean to become receptive to bhakti? And how Varnashrama is always subsidiary to bhakti. That's very important point, because oftentimes even devotees, they try to put Varnashrama over bhakti, or to overemphasize Varnashrama, maybe not without the reason, maybe because Varnashrama is not a very favorite child in the devotional circles, and sometimes we do neglect Varnashrama. So to kind of create balance in this regard, this devotee starts overemphasizing Varnashrama, but that's a remedy which is more dangerous than the disease itself. So again, from the start, I want to say that if we study this section of Srimad Bhagavatam, we will get a very balanced and proper view of what Varnashrama is, and we will be able to practically understand how to apply Varnashrama in the modern context. That's basically what I will try to explain. And before I go into some little details of this thing, I wanted to read a section from Bhaktivinoda Thakur Sri Chaitanya Shikshamritam, where he explains the evolution of a human being and the rules which are followed on every stage of development of a human being. Varnashrama is a certain stage of development. So we should very clearly distinguish between Varnashrama as a natural stage of development for the human being, for the civilized human being, and Varnashrama followed by us as devotees. There is a distinction, and basically Bhaktivinoda Thakur will say that there is a tension between Bhakti and Varnashrama. Even though Varnashrama is a very beautiful system which makes people pious and which facilitates, from one hand, facilitates smooth transition from, material piety towards higher version of piety, which is bhakti, transcendental piety, transcendental dharma. From material dharma to transcendental dharma, Varnashrama dharma is very important as a transition stage, or as a springboard from one stage to another. Nevertheless, we should not underestimate that there will always be some tension between those people who follow the rules of a lower stage and those people who follow the rules of the higher stage. And let us not fall into this trap. Why I want to read this paragraph from Chaitanya Charitamrita, because I'm sure if you listen to it attentively, you will understand certain dynamics which we can see in our society when the ardent followers of Varnashrama system condemn some people who are apparently neglectful to Varnashrama. And again, you know, it really has to be judged very carefully whether somebody is neglectful to Varnashrama or he is neglectful to the details of Varnashrama, but not neglectful to the essence of Varnashrama. So let's hear what Bhaktivinoda Thakur has to say in this regard. The reason is that man's life takes the form of ascending steps. Bhaktivinoda Thakur saying that our whole life is like a ladder, and we have to take one step after another step and follow very strictly the rules. That's from the section where Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains the following the rules on each stage of our life and each stage of our development. Those outside the Varnashrama system are on the lowest step. Those people who don't follow Varnashrama system, they're the lowest of all. I mean, that's unfortunately all of us. Atheistic moralists are on the second step. Very pertinently, Bhaktivinoda Thakur calls followers of Varnashrama as atheistic moralists, because a pure Varnashrama system is about the morals, not about God. God is there, but it doesn't have to be there. And therefore, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that Varnashrama system is basically for those people who want to be moral, but they are atheistic. The second step. Theistic moralists are the third step. Theistic moralists also are included into the Varnashrama system. Or you may say that atheistic moralists are outside of Varnashrama. But no, but Bhaktivinoda Thakur makes these two stages within Varnashrama. First, are followers of Varnashrama who don't believe in God or place him into some subsidiary role. And second Varnashrama division is those followers of Varnashrama who believe in God and who know that the God is the main point of Varnashrama. But then he says, why the bhaktas are the fourth step. Higher than them are those people who follow Vaidhi Bhakti. And Raganuga bhaktas are the fifth step. Yet higher than Vaidhi bhaktas are Raganuga bhaktas. They are the fifth stage. So we have outside of Varnashrama, two stages within Varnashrama, atheistic moralist and theistic moralist. Then we have Vaidhi bhaktas, and we have the highest Raganuga bhaktas, the bhaktas who are spontaneously following the heart, the raga, the attachment to the Lord in their practices of bhakti. So let's try also to identify where we are, whether we are primarily theistic moralists, followers of Varnashrama, who strive for God and who actually on this stage, or where in essence, in our identity are Vaidhi bhaktas, or maybe we are Raganuga bhaktas, who knows. So please listen, it's very important point. It's very important. It is the nature of the soul to ascend to the next stage, to the next higher step. But he should not ascend prematurely or too quickly. So it's the nature of the soul to try to progress. We want to be higher and higher and higher. Ultimately, every one of us wants to reach the highest stage. We all want to reach the perfection. So, and therefore he describes this ladder, and he says that, yes, please go further. Don't stay in the place where you are. It doesn't matter where you are now. You are entitled to go all the way up there. That's no problem. But please don't be too much in a hurry. Don't try to do it prematurely or too quickly, because it will only create disturbance in your own life and in the life of others. Don't imagine that you're already Raganuga, Ragatmika, Raga, whatever, Bhakti, and you're serving the Lord in your spiritual body, whereas, you know, as again, I think Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati used to say this: people don't know how to go to toilet, and they imagine that properly, and they imagine that they are already, you know, practicing Raganuga sadhana. That's why Bhaktivinoda Thakur told Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati instilled this desire in his followers, establish Varnashram, because that's a gradual progression, and you cannot reach the highest step without going through these steps. If you try to jump over all these steps, you know, like Prabhupada, he was laughing, you know, big monkey, big belly, Lanka jumping melancholy. That's English translation of some verses, Bengali verses, that, you know, that when big monkey with big bellies tried to imitate Hanuman and jump to the Lanka, they ended up somewhere in a big disgrace in the water, because they just cannot jump, too much belly. So basically, Prabhupada used this example to say that you should not go prematurely. Therefore, Varnashrama is an important stage of development. But you at the same time have to know where you have to reach. And therefore, Bhaktivinoda Thakur continues. Only after being firmly established on one step, it is possible to ascend the next step. So you cannot jump because you have to have very firm foundation. So you have to establish yourself in this step, in this one step, and then go to the next step, and then go to the next. That is why being qualified with steadiness on each level has been emphasized. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he is explaining very important verse from the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Svesvedikari yanishta saguna parikirtitaha. What is, when Uddhava asks, please tell me, what is guna? What is the proper behavior? What is the virtue? Shri Krishna answers to him, Svesvedikari yanishta. When you are established in your own position, in your own adhikar. And this being established is guna. Everything else is dosha. And therefore, Krishna repeats twice this verse. So what is this? Swadharma Nidana. Swadharma, Shreya Swadharma Viguna, Paradharma Bhayava. It's better to perform one's own duty than to perform somebody else's duty, even if it's a higher duty. Therefore, Bhaktivinoda Thakur stresses this. Only after being firmly established in one step, it is possible to ascend to the next step. That is why being qualified with steadiness on each level has been emphasized. When a person is qualified to ascend the next step, he must also give up attachment to the next step, to the previous step, to the old step. But if you reach the qualification, if you are established in certain position, you have to go for it. Because the tendency is, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur will say, the tendency to cling to the old stage is called niyama agraha, clinging to outmoded rules. it's a very prominent, there is one tendency is to rush, and that is niyamagraha. You neglect the rules of each stage, and you try to follow the rules which you cannot really follow. Another tendency is to cling to the old rules, and it is called also niyamagraha, when you're too much attached to the rules and regulations, and you're not progressing through these ladders, through these steps. And these two ways of niyamagraha are being described here. Because of this, the outcasts have no respect for atheistic moralists. It's very interesting. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that those who follow the rules of the lower stage, they disrespect those who follow the higher rules. Paradoxically enough, instead of saying humbly, okay, they follow the higher principles, I cannot follow the higher principle, they try to denigrate the followers of higher principle to their level, or say that they're just pretenders, they're outdated people who follow all these outdated rules. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that those who don't follow this, they deride theistic moralists, atheistic moralists. Those who are outside of Varnashram, we can see those people, like in America, if you tell them follow Varnashram, they say no, this is not modern. Like this is too conservative. Like Allen Ginsberg, he loved Srila Prabhupada in a personal way, but he didn't like Prabhupada's preaching too much because he thought it's too conservative. And many times he would introduce Srila Prabhupada to the modern people, to the modern hippies of the age. And he was the leader of these hippies, more or less. They were all, praying to him and worshiping him. But he would always kind of apologize, please forgive this Swamiji for being so conservative. He doesn't believe in free sex, so he's too conservative. So, and basically that's what Bhaktivinoda Thakur is saying here, that people outside of Varnashram, that they will always disrespect people who follow Varnashram, even the atheistic moralists. The atheistic moralists have no respect to pseudo-theistic moralists. Pseudo-theistic moralists, or those who follow Varnashram, they don't like those people in Varnashram who follow the higher rules of Varnashram, with the idea that they should reach God. Pseudo-theists have no respect to theistic moralists. Theistic moralists have no respect to Vaida Bhaktas. And Vaida Bhaktas have no respect to Ragatmika Bhakti. Bhaktivinoda Thakur goes all the way through, and he says that it's a human tendency. If you are on a certain stage, you will try to deride those people who follow the higher stage. And therefore, the ardent followers of Varnashram, they will criticize Vaidhi Bhakti. And those who are following Vaidhi Bhakti, they will criticize those who follow Raganuga Bhakti. That's unfortunately human nature. So we should not fall into this trap. We should understand this is my level. I follow it very diligently and honestly and sincerely. Those who are higher than me, they're worshipable for me. I really, respect them, but I cannot do this now. I'm not trying to imitate them, but at the same time, when we develop such a respect towards those who are higher, then when we will reach the qualification of the higher stage, we will not cling to the lower rules and lower standards of our life. Because of such habit, the followers of Varnashram often do not respect Vaida Bhaktas. So this is this tension which I spoke about in the beginning of this section of my speech. The tension is there. We have to be very clear, and we have to understand the nature of this tension. And this tension is in our society, unfortunately. This tension actually came initially from those critics who criticized Prabhupada because he introduced women's ashram in his temples, introduced all these things, and they said he's destroying Vedic culture. Prabhupada, who probably made the most to establish Vedic culture all over the world and to glorify Vedic culture and to give people the idea, all kinds of Western people, the idea how glorious the Vedic culture is. By the followers of Vedic culture, he is criticized. Severely, he was severely criticized. But what happened within these 50 years, which separate us from these times of criticism of Srila Prabhupada, now the followers, some followers of Varnashram are criticizing within our society that you don't follow too much Varnashram because you're too much into Vaidhi Bhakti, you're neglecting some important rules of Varnashram on the pretext that you're following pure devotional service. That's the dynamic which is going on, unfortunately, here and there. I don't say that there is no basis of this, but let's be clear what's going on. Therefore, again, the balance is very important. This does not affect bhakti itself, but it is a misfortune for those who do not take up interest in their own advancement. When they neglect bhakti, the pure devotional service with the emphasis on serving the devotees, emphasis on chanting the holy name, emphasis on Srimad Bhagavatam, serving the deity and residing in the holy dham, when we don't put this on a higher possible position, studying the Srimad Bhagavatam, chanting the holy name, then our following Varnashrama will become something which may not be so much desirable. But if we understand that this is the highest, and this is my stage, I'm gradually following, but I will reach this stage of Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, pure devotional service, starting with Shravanam and Kirtanam, developing the attachments through the following of the rules of Varnashrama as the means to reach this stage, then it's very good, then it's very useful, then it's glorious, then it has to be emphasized again and again and again. Those at the higher stage naturally have compassion for those at the lower stage, but until the lower situated people are fortunate, they cannot give up their stage and develop the taste for the higher stage. So, Bhaktivinoda Thakur said everything here. And therefore, this is the way how Narada Muni is describing Varnashrama in this section of Srimad Bhagavatam. And therefore, this section of Srimad Bhagavatam starts with the question of Maharaja Yudhishthira. And Maharaja Yudhishthira asks, this is the second verse of this chapter, Bhagavan Srotum Ichhami, O my Lord, O my teacher, O Bhagavan, the representative of God, Srotum Ichhami, I want to hear from you. Nrinam Dharma Sanatanam, I want to hear about you, the Sanatana Dharma, the eternal occupational duty, Varnashrama Charayuta, connected with Varnashrama. I want to hear about Sanatana Dharma, which is Varnashrama Charayuta, Yutam, Yat Puman Vindate Param, by which one gets Vindate Param. Vindate means to know, by which one gets the highest knowledge. What is the highest knowledge? Is the highest knowledge of God. So Varnashrama Dharma here is described as the means to know God. This is Sanatana Dharma. This is the eternal occupational duty with the idea to understand God, to vindate. Srila Prabhupada often translates this vindate. This is again from the same root, vid, to see, vindate, govinda. The Madhvacharya, he explains what the word Govinda means. Go means Vedas. One who is known by the Vedas is Govinda, who is described everywhere in the Vedas. So Vindate, Param Vindate in this verse, in the second verse, Yat Puman Vindate Param, by which one can get the highest knowledge. Varnashrama is the way to get the knowledge of Krishna, to get the knowledge. And we have to always remember this. This is the purpose, not Varnashrama for the sake of being Varnashrama. So that's what it is. And this is Sanatana Dharma, by which person actually gets the highest possible knowledge. And we can see that those who follow the rules of Varnashrama, their understanding becomes deeper, as opposed to those who say, you know, I'm pure bhakta and I can neglect all the rules and regulations. No, you will never get real knowledge of Bhagavan unless you know what are the duties which you should perform. And that's why Krishna established Varnashram. I wanted to share with you some realization which I had this morning while I was reading these verses and these passages of Srimad Bhagavatam. It's interesting that, as I said, what is Varnashrama? Varnashrama is an institution which has been at one point of was at one point of time spread all over the world, and we can see the remnants of Varnashrama in the ancient culture of Greeks, in the culture of Romans, in Europe before it was dismantled, especially after the French Revolution, and now there is this crazy system of egalitarianism, and everyone is deemed to be equal. Very dangerous, impersonal system. Therefore, Prabhupada said that the whole West is Mayavad. Why? Also because Varnashrama was destroyed and neglected and deprecated in the West. But the realization which I wanted to share is that that's the proof in Srimad Bhagavatam, in the 7th canto, that the Lord is impartial. If you are ready to practice bhakti, if you can develop this attitude of shraddha, of respect towards the Lord and towards the devotees, fine, very good, you can practice it. And at the same time, find out what you have to follow also. All this, four regulative principles, which is the foundation of Varnashrama and so on and so forth. If you're not ready, Varnashrama is for you. And Krishna says exactly this thing in Bhagavad Gita. In Bhagavad Gita, first he says in 4:11, I'm impartial. I'm just reciprocating with the people. How people relate to me, I reciprocate with them accordingly. I do what they, I just reciprocate. So then the question says, yes, what if the nature of the people is not so conducive for Krishna Bhakti? So what to do? Krishna says, yes, there are some people who have material desires. In the next verse, in the 12th verse, he says that, and they worship demigods. And then he says, Chaturvarnyam maya sristam varnashrama vibhagashaha. I created the system for those people who have material desires. For those people who are described in the previous verse, this is how Baladev Vidyabhushan explains this. For those people who are described in the previous verse, I created Varnashama system. What is the essence of Varnashama system? The essence of Varnashama system is to help people to get purified from material desires. And when they get purified from material desires, very easily they will develop Shraddha in the process of Bhakti, and they will start worshiping the Lord, and the Lord will start reciprocating with them. So again, in a very gist, the essence of Varnashama is a social system for those people who have material desires, for those people who are full of material desires, who want to fulfill their material desires. That's the system for them, which will satisfy their desires and will gradually purify their heart from the material desires and help them to develop Bhakti in the Supreme Lord and become a pure devotees like Prahlad. So that's, again, in gist, very the message of this section of Srimad Bhagavatam. That's an indirect way which helps to purify the heart for those who are not ready to practice Bhakti. So, I'm a little tired. But it's an important topic. So I promise to you that how Varnashama works. What is the mechanism? You know, if we take modern society, what is modern society? Modern society is the social system which tries to increase the material desires within the people. It increases Trishna, the thirst, insatiable thirst. You know, you take some chips, salty, and chips will get you more thirst, and then you get some Pepsi, and you take Pepsi to satisfy your thirst, and you satisfy your thirst, and you take more chips, and then you take more chips, and you take more Pepsi. So that's how the modern system works. The modern economical system cannot work for people who are satisfied in themselves. It will collapse because it just produces more and more and more useless things, and it can only be sustainable if the thirst within the heart of the people become more and more insatiable, and therefore you create all kinds of artificial needs in people, and it goes on, and ultimately it will collapse, but it will be huge tragedy for many, many people who are not prepared. So that's a crazy, absolutely insane modern system which destroys the world, destroys sentiments in human heart, destroys everything. Merciless, cruel, insane social system with egalitarianism attached to it. Everyone is equal. Everyone is equal. So what is the system? What is the alternative to this system? Alternative to this system is Varnashama system with its understanding, and I will explain essential points of Varnashama as opposed to non-essential details of Varnashama. But let's proceed. The question which I'm answering now, how Varnashama works. What is the mechanism? By which mechanism Varnashama helps us to get rid of the material desires? For that, the verse from Yajnavalkya Smriti is very important. The verse from Yajnavalkya Smriti, which Srila Prabhupada already quoted in the purport, and I explained to you that I promised to you that I will explain these three versions of Dharma Moolam. Again, let's read this Yajnavalkya Smriti verse. Shruti Smriti Sadacharaha Swasya Cha Priyam Atmanaha. So, what is the mechanism how the Varnashram system works? You follow Shruti, you follow Smriti, you develop Sadachar, habit for Sadachar, for your pious conduct. What is the result? Swasya Cha Priyam Atmanaha. As a result, you become happy. If you follow the rules of Varnashrama, you become happy, and therefore you become satisfied. And because you become satisfied, you don't have material desires which you saw that you will become happy by fulfilling these desires, and you realize that it doesn't really work, but you're anyway happy because you're pious. It's actually was the main point of preaching by Socrates. Socrates was saying that those people who are pious, they're happy. And if you don't follow the rules and regulations, you're not happy. You cannot be happy. No way for you to become happy. But anyway, let's not get into it. Therefore, it is said here, Samyak Sankalpa Jakama Dharma Mulam Idam Spritav. So what happens, you become happy by following the rules, and then you develop Samyak Sankalpa Jakama, you develop desire to follow more and more properly all these rules. Because you feel the happy, you feel the reciprocation, Atma is happy, mind is happy, your family is happy, everyone is happy. Then you develop desire to follow this Samyak Sankalpaja, determination. And because you're determined, you have the desire, Dharma Mulam Idam Spritam. You become very pious. So actually, what is said in this Yajnavalkya Smriti is that the root of Dharma is your desire to be satisfied, and when you experience this satisfaction by following Dharma, then you will become pious. So in this way, you give people some initial impetus to be pious, and then they will naturally become pious because it's nice to be pious, because it's pleasing to the heart to be pious, because it's actually happy life, happy, simple, pure life which people lead. So Yajnavalkya Smriti said that's the root of Dharma. The root of Dharma, the Dharma of its root should be just your intelligence. If you're intelligent enough to understand that by following the pious way of life, Dharma, you will become happy, then you will become dharmic, you will become pious. That's version of Yajnavalkya Smriti. Let's see the version of Manusmriti. Vedo Akhila Dharma Mulam. The Dharma Mulam, the root of all Dharma is Vedas. All the Vedas is the root of all Dharma. You read the Vedas, you have respect to the Vedas, and you understand that you should follow the Vedas. Because in the Vedas it is said, do this, don't do this. Chodana Lakshana Dharma. What is Dharma? Dharma is this vidhi of the Vedas. Do this and nishedas. Don't do this. If you have the faith in scriptures, you will follow this. Veda Kila Dharma Mulam Smriti Shili Chatadvidam. Also Smriti, which is according to the Vedas, and Shile, the behavior of those, or character of those who know this, Tadvidam, who know these things, Acharas Chati, Sadhunam, the behavior of Sadhu, Atmanas Tushtireva, he. So ultimately, it's interesting that Yajnavalkya Smriti says the root of Dharma is your desire to be satisfied and your experience of being satisfied by following Dharma. Manu says, no, the root of Dharma, Manu gives the higher conception. Root of Dharma is your faith in Veda. If you believe in Veda and if you see these people and you also follow these people, you also feel satisfaction. Atmanastushtireva cha. That's the last proof of Dharma. You do something good according to the Shruti Smriti and the behavior of good people, of sadhus, and you feel satisfaction. That's also root of Dharma, but that's the last root of Dharma. The higher root of Dharma, the higher understanding of how to establish Dharma in the society, on how to become pious yourself, is to believe in Vedas who say, do this, don't do that. But here we have Srimad Bhagavatam version of the same statement, and Narada Muni says, no, no, no. It's not the satisfaction of the soul which is the root of Dharma. It's not the Vedas which is the root of Dharma. What is the root of Dharma? Dharma Mula Hi Bhagavan. If you understand that Bhagavan is the source of all the Vedas, if you understand that ultimately you have to please Bhagavan, then as a result of it, Dharma Mula, you will lead the pious life. That's the real root of Dharma. The desire to please Bhagavan. You can only become perfectly pious, absolutely dharmic, follow all the rules, if this desire to please Bhagavan will become overwhelming, and by this desire to please Bhagavan, yayatma suprasidati. It is also said here that by this you will become satisfied. Yena atma, yena chatma prasidati. Yes, you will become also satisfied, but that's not the starting point. Yajnavalkya Smriti says, be intelligent enough, you want to be happy, follow Dharma. Manu says, be intelligent enough, read Vedas. Vedas say, you will become happy, follow the Vedas. This is the root of Dharma. Srimad Bhagavatam, Narada Muni in Srimad Bhagavatam says, understand that Bhagavan is the root of everything. If you understand this, if you follow this, this Varnashram Dharma, you will become perfectly okay. So that's the foundation of Narada Smriti, the Dharma Shastra according to Narada Muni, the Dharma Shastra according to the Narada Smriti, the Dharma Shastra according to Srimad Bhagavatam. So that's an important part which I wanted to say, and I'm already speaking for quite a long time. So, yeah, let me say just a few more important things. So, what are the essential rules of Varnashram Dharma? We described the tension between Varnashram and Vaidhi Bhakti. We described the proper place of Varnashram. Varnashram is for us to achieve the highest goal of devotional service. We have to follow Varnashram, no doubt about it. We should not forget about the ultimate goal of Varnashram rules. Varnashram works, we also established how Varnashram works. It helps us to purify our heart from material desires, which are bothering us. We all know. We start chanting this material desire, that material desire. You want to get up and run here and there and chant your japa while, doing some healthy japa walk. No. Most important japa, Everything else is after that. All the health is important, everything else is important, but there has to be hierarchy of our goals. So concentrate on, at least for a few rounds, for 2, 3, 4 rounds on the holy name. Then you can walk, no problem. So this is what we established so far. We described different versions of different Dharma Shastras, 3 Dharma Shastras, including Srimad Bhagavatam as a Dharma Shastra, special Dharma Shastra. From the Bhakti point of view, what is the root? Dharma Mulam Hi Bhagavan, Dharma Projita Kaita Vatra, Paramo Nirmatsaranam Satam, Vedyam Vastavam Atra Vastu Shivadama. He understands that Vedyam, the knowable, Vedyam Vastavam, what you can understand is Vastava Vastavam, the most important essence of all creation is God. And if you understand God, Tapotrayan Mulanam, he is Shivadam. If you understand this, you will get auspiciousness and you will get rid of all the unhappiness. And in this way, you get Yayatma Suprasidati, the special, very special satisfaction of the soul, not just prasidati, not just satisfaction, but suprasidati. Then you will follow Varnashrama as it is described by Narada Muni here. And I will leave it for you to read this section of Srimad Bhagavatam and understand what you can follow, what you cannot follow. Like, for example, you cannot really be dressed in the bark of a tree nowadays. Not very practical. Some rules are not so essential. But so far, this is what we have said. So what is the essence of the rules of Varnashrama? It is described next in the verses 8 to 12. In 7th verse, we read together with the purport, and 8 to 12 describe these verses. 5 verses describe 30 qualities which are general, which are the qualities of civilized human beings for everyone. Everyone has to follow them. It starts with what? Satya, Daya, Tapa, Socham, which means Satya, tell the truth. 4 pillars of Dharma: Satya, Daya, mercy, Tapa, austerity, Socha, cleanliness. For Satya, we don't engage in gambling because that's cheating. Among the cheating means gambling is the most abominable way of cheating. Therefore, we follow this. Daya, mercy. Therefore, we don't eat meat because cruelty towards other living entities is against this principle of religion. And if we want to be civilized or belong to Varnashrama, yes, we have to strictly follow this. Tapa, austerity. Austerity means we don't take intoxicants, because if we take intoxicants, you cannot become austere because you only magnify your thirst within your heart. And Shocham, we are very strict about following the so-called force regulative principle. We are not engaged in illicit sex relationship because this is the most contaminating things of our consciousness. If you are engaged in this, or you're looking pornography or whatever it is, it's very contaminated. So that's the beginning, that's the foundation of our Varnashrama system. And then very interestingly, Narada Muni goes further: Titikshana, Samodamo, Ahimsa, Brahmacharyam, Tyaga, Svadhyaya, Arjavam, Santosha, Samadrik, Seva, and so on and so forth. He describes all these rules or principles of behavior which any civilized people should follow. And then he says, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Cha, Asya, Smaranam, Mahatam Gate, Seve, Ijya, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atma Samarpanam. He basically repeats the same verse. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Pada Sevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atmani Vedanam. And that's the trick. What is Varnashrama? Within Varnashrama, Bhakti is hidden. You have your desire. You have little pious credit, some может быть, ты отключишь этот самый. Она выключается, потому что подключила. Но иногда свет там горит. Okay. Constantly the electricity goes up and off, and therefore it's really disturbing. It's better to turn it off completely. Выключи совсем, чем оно будет скакать туда-сюда. It's really disturbing. So Bhakti is hidden within Varnashrama. Bhakti is actually the active principle of Varnashrama. Everything else follows from Bhakti. If you hear about the Lord, if you are a member of Varnashrama, you will have to hear Bhagavad Gita, you will have to do japa, you will have to hear Puranas and everything else. And then ultimately Atma Samarpanam. That's how Varnashrama works, and that's why Varnashrama works. Varnashrama only works because there is this electric battery of Bhakti, which gives energy. If we take away Bhakti from Varnashrama, and if we follow all the strict rules of Varnashrama, this and that, it will become a dead instrument for exploitation of one people of another. And that's what unfortunately happened in India. Why this reaction is there, still people worship Ambedkar, who created this Indian constitution and said that everyone is equal, because Varnashrama was misused, grossly misused. Why it was grossly misused? Because the element of Bhakti, which purifies the whole Varnashrama and electrifies, enlivens all Varnashrama, makes Varnashrama proper, gives the proper mood, Bhakti, which is the mood of love. If you take Bhakti from Varnashrama, it's a useless, cruel instrument of exploitation. That's what it will become, and therefore people rejected it. But not because it's bad. It's a good instrument, but because people misused it, and they somehow or other, through the historical development or the degradation throughout the time, they deprived or divorced Bhakti from Varnashrama. So that's essence. And what Varnashrama does, what is the role of Varnashrama? Varnashrama makes us disciplined, and Varnashrama makes us very humble and respectful. The main principles of Varnashrama is follow strictly all these little details, you become disciplined. And when it comes to worshiping the deity, you become perfect in worshiping the deity. For Western people, it's very difficult to follow strictly the rules of Pancharatra. Why? Because they're not trained in Varnashrama. Of course, nowadays nobody is trained in Varnashrama. But Varnashrama means little details. You get up early. All the rules of cleanliness are naturally there in Varnashrama. So first is discipline. You go and you take baths 3 times a day, or at least 1 time a day, not every Ekadashi. You clean, you maintain cleanliness, you do this, all the things which we do automatically. That's an essential part of Varnashrama, which Narada Muni would describe interestingly in these things. I will not go into details. Another essential part of Varnashrama, that's first one, discipline. try to follow the rules without being too much attached to it, but still kind of you like to follow the rules. You like to be regulated. I remember I met long ago one very ardent follower of Varnashram, and it so happened that we lived together for quite some time, for a couple of months. We were in a very close association. And then I overheard him speaking something about me. And he was glorifying me, actually, to my surprise. And he said, oh yeah, he follows all the rules. He follows all the rules. He was glorifying me. He is, very sattvic, very sattvic, very, very sattvic. That's why? Because we are bhaktas. And this sattva guna is natural. And we ultimately develop some taste for following these rules, the rules of cleanliness and everything, which followers of Varnashram really appreciate. So that's one thing, discipline. Second thing is respect. In Varnashrama, why I several times quite strongly spoke against the modern trend of being egalitarian. Everyone is equal, because nobody is equal. Nobody is equal. It's a big cheating. And Prabhupada was very strong about it, very strong. Everyone is different. There is a natural hierarchical system. This natural hierarchical system will become a useless instrument of exploitation, those who are higher to those who are lower, if there is no bhakti. But if there is bhakti within this system is beautiful, because it helps those who are on a lower position develop natural humility, and it helps them to experience the natural protection which comes from up down. So the proper Varnashrama system, where the bhakti is the living force, is that those who are on a lower position, they show respect and service attitude towards who are higher, and those who are in a higher position, their heart melts, and they want to do everything for those who serving them, and they bless them by giving them knowledge, by giving them riches, by giving them whatever is within their position. That's a beautiful system, and Prabhupada explains that without Varnashrama, without this following this dharma, there cannot be peace in the society. That's the key. You become humble, naturally humble, and respect those who know more than you, who are more senior in age, who are more, more powerful than you, and you manifest this. Who have more money, they also worthy of respect, because that means they are more intelligent than you. And especially those who have more bhakti, more devotion, who chanting more, who have more. And then those who hire, their heart will melt, and they will give everything to you. And another important feature of Varnashram is ahimsa. You should not inflict pain to anyone. You should be very straightforward. Satyam, it's very important. And you should feed everyone. Still, this element of Varnashram Dharma is still here in India. Everyone wants to feed you. That's culture of Varnashram. That's the culture of Varnashram based on love. And by this, you will develop love to Krishna. You will develop natural humility towards Krishna. Being disciplined, you will become first-class bhakta, because you will follow your guru strictly, and you will also do it with natural humility. Being disciplined, you will follow strictly. You will do it without rebellious attitude. You will become first-class devotee. This is how Varnashrama works. Varnashrama trains you in some qualities which helps you to execute devotional service. And that's the essence of Varnashrama. you know, the natural hierarchical system which we have to respect is very important. Like I'm here now in Bangalore, and Madhva Mata, the Madhva line is very prominent here. And Madhvas, they have this Taratanya system, the hierarchical system. And they have, you know, position. This is Lord Brahma. This is Mukhya Pran Vayudev. Then they have 49 Maruts, which are different aspects of Vayu. And they have different positions for different Vayus. Recently, I just found out about it. This is Mukhya Pran. He is the highest Vayu. There is transcendental Mukhya Pran or Pran in the spiritual world. There is this demigod. There is this Vayu, who is the number 7 in the hierarchy of demigods. There is this Vayu who is number 13 in the hierarchy of demigods. This is this Vayu who is number 35 in the hierarchy of demigods. So it's not just 49 Maruts. It's the different grades of this. So they are into this, into hierarchy. And there's nothing wrong with it if you understand the essence of it. Yes, there is this natural hierarchical system, which I have to respect, but there is also a feeling of love, which makes me equal with everyone. By his love, Krishna elevates everyone to the equal position, and by manifesting love towards others, we will also not develop all this inferiority complex by occupying the position, the natural lower Shudra position which we are in. So having said this, I really have to finish because I already overdue and leave some time for questions. I didn't describe the details, but I wanted to describe the essence of our national system. But what I want to say at the end, very important, because all of a sudden at the end, Narada Muni starts describing his own story. I was a Gandharva in a previous life, and then because I was singing cinema songs in an assembly of Sankirtan of pure devotees, they cursed me and I became Shudra. And because I became Shudra, I was born in the Shudra family, but then I served pure devotees and I became a personal associate of the Lord Narada Muni. So why? He basically wants to re-emphasize again that Varnashram is important, but Bhakti is more important. And therefore he says to Maharaj Yudhishthira, your Pandavas are the most glorious because you have Bhakti. It doesn't matter that you are the kings. You are higher than any Munis. At the end of the 10th chapter, he says, Narada Muni continued, my dear Maharaj Yudhishthira, all of you are extremely fortunate, for the Supreme Personality of Godhead lives in your palace like just like a human. Great saintly persons know this well, and therefore they constantly visit this house. The great saintly person, those who are highest in Varnashrama system, the highest rulers of Varnashrama, the purest of the Brahmanas, they go to Pandavas and they bow down towards Pandavas. Why? Because Pandavas are pure devotees. And having said this, Narada Muni again repeats this. At the end of the 15th chapter of this 7th canto, he again repeats this. So King Yudhishthira, because of your service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, all of you Pandavas defeated the greatest dangers caused by numerous kings and demigods by serving the lotus feet of Krishna. You conquered great enemies. You were like elephants, and thus you collected ingredients for sacrifice. By his grace, may you be delivered from material involvement. So he says that all the achievements of Varnashrama, the highest knowledge, the highest respect, the highest power, military strength, heroic feats, conquest over your enemies, money, by which you collected all the ingredients of the sacrifice. You performed the most greatest sacrifice ever. And ultimately liberation. Everything is coming to you because of your bhakti. It's bhakti which is the root of everything else. And if you place bhakti as the rule, bhakti towards Bhagavan as the rule, then you become naturally pious. And then you follow all these rules, you become a pious brahmana. If you have this constitution, if you become very powerful kshatriya, you become very rich vaishya, you'll become very good shudra. And ultimately, you know, even if you're shudra, if you are following this by the association of devotees, you will become completely purified and you will become pure. And that's why this example of Narada Muni of himself being Gandharva is there at the very end to re-emphasize the importance of bhakti and how bhakti overrules all the rules of varnashrama, not contradicts the rules of varnashrama, but actually supersedes all the rules of varnashrama and helps one to get in contact with pure devotees. But varnashrama, nevertheless, is very important because it's also an instrument of indirect bhakti, a very glorious invention of the Lord to help those who are not ready to practice bhakti directly, to purify their hearts and ultimately get prepared for pure bhakti. And this is what we're doing. We're following some sort of Vaidhi, sometimes mixed with Varnashrama duties. Sometimes Varnashrama duty is very important for us, according to our position. No problem, it's very good. Be very good grihastha. Be very good vanaprastha or brahmachari or whatever. Follow this very strictly. Very important. Read this section of Srimad Bhagavatam. But understand that ultimately you have to become a pure devotee, and the only means to become a pure devotee is while performing these duties of varnashrama, is to associate with the devotees, serve the devotees, and especially serve Srila Prabhupada as a pure devotee, serve his representatives. And in this way, Yayatma Suprasidati obtained the complete satisfaction of the soul. So that was my not so short presentation of this important section of Srimad Bhagavatam and how it is connected with the main topic of the seventh canto, Uti, how we develop our nature. We can purify, rectify our nature and material desires if we follow Varnashrama, and that's very important. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna. Maharaj, today's session by far brought the most clarity on this subject of Varnashrama, which you rightly mentioned right in the beginning of your session. Has a lot of, not question marks, but certainly there are a lot of differences of opinions. And I think, at least for myself, it brought a huge amount of clarity that Varna Ashram has its own place under the umbrella of bhakti. It is something where it is enabling to take us into the realm of bhakti, as opposed to be, existing in its own silo. So there are quite a few questions. I have two, and Anupama Radharani has also got two. So can we take about 3-4 questions?
Yeah. Let's take 3-4, not more, because
Okay.
so many
So,
other things.
I have one question, which is the idea and the ideals of Varna Ashram. How do they fit in with the reality of, particularly I'm talking about ISKCON and ISKCON devotees, as it has manifested from Srila Prabhupada's time to now, which is from a temple-based devotee institution to a largely congregation-based. So how does Varna Ashrama fit in this new reality of ISKCON? Where is it heading? And the outcomes that you spelled out of following the key essence of Varna Ashrama, does it fit into the current reality where our majority of our devotees are in the congregation? And I'm certainly one of them. If you could throw some light on that, Guru Maharaj.
We are living in a very hostile environment, which is definitely anti-Varnashram, because the ideals and ideas of the modern society, of the philosophers who are behind the modern society, all this propaganda which is going on in a very vehement way everywhere in the internet, all these democratic ideas and ideals, they're very hostile to Varnashram ideals. And we should not underestimate the extent of this hostility, even in India. You know, I remember I was in Govardhan and I met with some Indian people. And I think and we, at one point we started talking about Varnashram. I don't remember how it developed, but I found out that they came to Govardhan to celebrate, I believe, Ambedkar's birthday. And on the occasion of Ambedkar's birthday, they burned Manusmriti. They did this public autodafy, which Nazis did, you know, by burning these sacred books. That's the extent which hostility to ideas and ideals of our nation is there, even in some sections of Indian society, unfortunately. That's the reality which we are dealing with, and therefore it's very unpopular to propagate these ideas. And therefore Prabhupada is very bold, you know, in this day and age. He's in the West, he's propagating Varnashram and ideals of Varnashram, describing these ideals of chaste wife, how she should be chaste to her husband and everything else. So having said this, how to incorporate these ideals living in this environment? It's not going to be easy, but at the same time, it's not entirely impossible. We have to, you know, honestly define our nature according to Varnashram inclinations. Of course, which probably will be Varna Sankara, because we are Varna Sankara. We will find out different inclinations within our heart, but still there is some prominent nature is there. Try to, you know, execute it very honestly. Try to do, you know, it's also interesting. I will not touch this. This is too controversial. Anyway, so at least we should definitely do ashrama dharma, which Prabhupada calls the spiritual stages of life. And ashrama dharma means to be proper, you know, student of Vedic literature, you know, to study Vedas, to become proper grihasta, execute proper duties of grihasta, earning money, taking care of dependents, feeding others. It's fun to be a grihasta because you know you have to work hard and feed others. That's very good. Host in your home so many people, invite, take, you know, do some Bhakti Vriksha program or whatever, and feed everyone to their heart content. That's Varnashram. That's the duty of grihasta. And then become little detached from it. And Vanaprastha means basically go to some holy place, travel, and you know, share your experience, teach others, and then become sannyasi if you're Brahmana by nature, and dedicate completely fully yourself by teaching others. So at least this everyone can do. Try to be proper grihasta, proper vanaprastha, proper renunciate, proper brahmachari, proper wife, proper husband. Execute your duties. And as far as the varna duties, it's more difficult in the present society. So, what can we do? Just do the needful. Try to at least be engaged in some not a sinful enterprise. That's also a very important thing. Not be involved into this gross sinful activities like meat industry or wine industry or tobacco industry, this kind of stuff. That's the extent which we can, and then ultimately establish some communities where we can more properly practice varnashram. That's also important, especially in nowadays when the world is so unstable and the present economic system can collapse at any moment. And it will, when it will, and it will be a big tragedy. So be well established in this regard. At least have some plot of land where you can grow your vegetables and little rice, or if you cannot do this, understandable enough, support those communities which, due to crazy economic system, require, unfortunately, extra support from outside. Support those rural communities which are there, which are gradually coming up. Help them. That's also important. That will serve a purpose in the future. That's very far-sighted to help people, those dedicated people who are, leading very difficult life in the modern day and age, to lead their life. But if you're Brahmana, live in the city and teach others, preach. Unless you're a very reclusive Brahmana.
Thank you very much, Guru Maharaj. And the next question is basically an extension of the same. And the perspective is from a preaching point of view. So you have given the dharma of a grihastha and the qualities of a brahmana, and then preach even in the city if that's your nature. But my question, there is a little twist to it, that how do we preach this notion of varnashram that you have taken us through today, let's say in the congregations that we are in? That's the world that we live in. How do we take this subject and speak about this and establish in its true form, as we have heard from you today?
Well, the true form is to be humble, to respect seniors and superiors, to respect the devotees, serve the devotees, feed the devotees, be truthful, be sincere, try to speak the absolute truth to others. That's the essence of it. And be honest, do some honest occupation. Don't be greedy, because that's the 15th chapter of this book, 7th canto, where it is said that if you are not satisfied, there is no question of you being satisfied. Just be satisfied. Try to develop this santushta, the quality of satisfaction. And then if you live this life, you will have the power to preach about it. And you will be able to also preach about the rural communities where it can be established in a more proper way. But in the context of living in the city, just preach these principles of varnashram, general principles of varnashram. Others, respecting seniors, respecting devotees, serving devotees, being honest, doing some honest occupation, but most foremost, respecting the devotees, respecting those who are preachers, respecting Prabhupada's followers, Prabhupada's disciples, respecting. That's essence of varnashram. Being honest yourself and feeding others and doing your duties, and then helping agricultural communities where people are trying to live simple life, which is also important.
Thank you very much, Maharaj. And the next question is from Anupama Radharani Mataji. Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my respectful obeisances. Thank you for an enlightening class on Bhakti and Varna Ashram. You mentioned that one requires a little faith to begin with. Those who are atheistic are devoid of faith. They're inimical of the Lord and they derive no benefit from associating with a pure devotee, as was the case with Hiranyakashipu. It appears then there is a cycle in which the demoniac are caught in and cannot and make progress on the spiritual path. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord states that the demoniac are cast into hellish planets again and again. What hope is there for such souls? How do they make progress? Are such souls condemned to suffer in the material world forever?
Thank you very much for this compassionate question. There is a compassion which is behind this. See, therefore, the very beautiful and beautiful. Even if demons or people with demoniac mentalities live in the society which is organized properly, they will have the opportunity to break this vicious circle by doing some avyakta to great bodies. Everyone is going down and to a sannyasi, and you reluctantly you also bow down because there is some sort of social pressure which you feel. You would feel really stupid if you stand straight and everyone is going down. That's just a simple example how the social mechanisms work. You are in this society and sannyasi is respected. So, maybe a little reluctantly, maybe not so wholeheartedly, but still you kind of show some signs of respect. Or because of, social custom, even though you have little demoniac nature, somewhat demoniac nature, still you invite some brahmanas to eat in your home. Or for your, because it's also a custom that, you do some rituals, so many ways, if you are in a properly socially organized society, you will have an opportunity to get some pious credits, some agyata sukriti, which ultimately will accumulate. And when this agyata sukriti will accumulate, you will, you will develop an open a taste for associating with the devotees. You will develop the appreciation of a devotee. So there is no bar, even demoniac people, if they live in a properly organized society, they will develop spiritually. Even if demoniac people join ISKCON with some, with maybe not join, but, come and visit ISKCON. I recently heard a story. One scientist came to a lecture and he didn't believe his friend somehow or other. He said, let's go with me. And he kind of reluctantly, he didn't have much to do. So he reluctantly went to Hare Krishna temple and he heard Sunday feast class, and he didn't believe it. He didn't take it seriously. He was listening it with some sort of attitude which was not very conducive. But still, he was there. He was when everyone was chanting, he chanted a little bit. So he came back home, and his wife put a plate with meat, which he was very attached to. And he looked at this meat, and he realized that he cannot eat it. It was so repulsive to him. He went to bathroom and he became nauseous and he threw up because of this. So he was somewhat demoniac, one can say, but he came to an atmosphere which purified him. He heard kirtan, he heard some class, he heard something, some katha. It purified him. So that's how it works. Agyata Sukriti. Even though intentionally he was not really prepared to be open to Bhakti.
Hare Krishna. So the next question now we go to is from Dinesh Kumar. His inquiry is, the Varna Ashram Dharma is established by Supreme Lord Krishna, who is absolute. Then why this Varna Ashram Dharma gets deteriorated with time? What is the force that overpowers?
Sakale Neha Mahata Yoganashta Parantapa. Krishna himself says that by the influence of time, the time destroys everything. That's the definition of time. What is time? Time, according to the Sanskrit definition, is kalayati iti kalaha. The something kalayati sarvam. The something which puts an end to everything is kala, is the time. Time is the destructive power. And Krishna himself says that I come and destroy everything in the form of time. That's another form of Krishna and his destructive feature. So Krishna himself creates Varnashrama, Krishna himself maintains Varnashrama, and Krishna himself in the form of time destroys Varnashrama when Kali Yuga comes. But why he destroys Varnashrama? Because Kali Yuga is a very special time where all those unfulfilled desires, people with unfulfilled desires, which they could not possibly fulfill in a more pious social organization and more pious societies, unheard of desires, they come and they fulfill it, and therefore Krishna gives them facility to fulfill these desires. But those who are intelligent, they can understand there is no use to contaminate myself by fulfilling these dirty desires. Let me do something worthwhile.
Thank you, Maharaj. Next question, the last one, is from Neeraja Akshi Govinda Prabhu. How can we implement Varnashrama Dharma in the industry-based economy? So many people depend on industries for their livelihood.
Just 1 second. I want there is no questions. Says that there is no translation on YouTube. There was no translation. That's why there is no. Why? Okay. Okay, so I already answered this, that it's not possible to establish Varnashrama is industry-based society. Therefore, it's very important to try to create at least little pockets of agriculturally based society where agriculture is the basis of economy. And then, you know, this industry-based society, inevitably it will collapse, especially because the monetary basis is so artificial. This whole, you know, society is based on the value of some green paper, you know, with little pattern in the green paper, with some faces of American presidents. So that's not a very solid foundation for the economy. Sooner or later, this green paper will become what it is, Yadharupam. It will become as it is, just green paper, which is not very useful. Now it has some artificially applied value, which is conventional. But this convention, as any convention, will be destroyed by the force of time. And at that time, you know, the industry-based society will collapse. And I'm not into doomsdays, and I'm not into saying that it will happen now or whatever. But it's destined to happen. Because there's no foundation of this society. There is no piety in this society. There will be something. So we have to be prepared, at least mentally we have to be prepared, if not in a better way, by establishing some base, by trying to finance the agriculturally based communities. Like in Hungary, they do it, and they have this beautiful community. And all the people who live in the cities, they contribute a little bit to this Krishna's Valley, to this community. They help because they know that ultimately this is where they can get shelter in this society. So that's just the common sense. And therefore, all these little communities are important, but they are struggling because they're trying to establish something in a very hostile atmosphere. So those people who have intelligence and who want to promote the cause of our national, which is important, they should help them to do it by giving some little financial support.
Thank you, Maharaj. And there is a last comment that comes from one of the devotees on YouTube, Raj Prabhu. Hare Krishna Maharaj, Danvat Pranam. One of the most sensitive topic, Varna Ashram Dharma. It justifies itself to qualify for a whole session dedicated for it. So I think that's a nice comment to end our session with, because I think this session was really very, very useful considering the confusion in the minds of devotees on the subject of Varna Ashram. And I think this brought in a lot of clarity.
I hope it didn't create more confusion. That's my only hope. Because nowadays we are in Kali Yuga is a very confused age, and whatever you say will be misinterpreted, confused even more. Anyway, let's see. I tried.
No, it was indeed useful.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for yet another very illuminating session, Guru Maharaj. And I know that next week it is not going to be there a session. I'll be in touch with Anupama Govinda Prabhu to find out when the next session would be. We would be eagerly waiting for that so that we can inform everyone about it. So thank you again. Please accept our most respectful obeisances. Vancha kalpataru bhascha. Kripa
अस्मिन् च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो
नमो नमः
His Holiness
ओम
Bhakti
गुरु
Vigyan Goswami Maharaj ki.
जय की जय
Prabhupada ki.
Jai.
जय
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 Thank you, Maharaj. Dandava Pranam. Thank you.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you Maharaj Thank you Maharaj
Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna
Please
Guruji
accept
ki
my
jai.
respectful obeisances, Maharaj.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you very much.
थैंक यू महाराज
Thank you. Hare Krishna. I think he left. Okay, Hare Krishna. We'll see you all for the 7:30 p.m. session with His Holiness Atmanivedan Maharaj for the Mahajan course in the session. So please do join in, and looking forward to your association. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.